Good morning, students. Yesterday we started with our chapter Nelson Mandela, and we read in the first part that Nelson Mandela became the first black president on 10th of May, and dignitaries from around the world had gathered to celebrate the historic occasion and the common victory of justice, peace, and human dignity. Now let's read the second part. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers rode in perfect formation over the Union buildings. So, when Nelson Mandela had taken the oath as the President of South Africa, he delivered a speech to the audience, and when his speech was over, there was an air show and everyone's eyes were lifted to the beautiful, impressive display of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers that were roaring in air, roaring in open, and there was a perfect formation over the Union buildings. Troop carriers are vehicle carrying soldiers. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. So, this demonstration of military transports or military jets or helicopters, it was a beautiful demonstration or display of coordination, of complete order, and it was a demonstration of military's loyalty to the new formed government, and it was a loyalty to the fair elections and free elections. Only now the country had been liberated from the white supremacy, so they were loyal to the newly formed government. Only moments before, the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and Police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pleaded their loyalty. So, moments before, when the swearing in ceremony happened, these officials, these Defence Force people, the people of highest generals, police, everyone, and their uniforms are decorated with ribbons and medals they have won in the days gone by in the wars, and they saluted the newly elected president, the black president, and pledged their loyalty to the country and to the newly formed government. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before they would not have saluted but arrested me. Now Nelson Mandela says that at present when he was elected as the president, they saluted Nelson Mandela. But then Nelson Mandela says that I was very much conscious of the fact that not so many years ago these police, these military officials or defense force might have arrested him because he was considered as outlaw, and but today they saluted him as the first black president of the country. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue jets, blue and gold of the new South African flag. So now when the air show was going on, the jet planes beneath them left a trail of smoke of black, red, green, blue and gold of the South African flag. Student, chevron is a pattern of shape of V. So the jets are beneath them are leaving the smoke of these beautiful colors of South African flag. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of whites singing Nkosi Sikelel' Afrika and black singing Das Stem, the old anthem of the Republic. So Nelson Mandela says that it was a proud moment for all the South African people that now it would not be any racial discrimination in the country, but along with it, it symbolized the day when both the national anthems were sung, and singing of both the national anthem symbolized equality. It says that how the whites also sang their national anthem of Nkosi Sikelel', that is Lord bless Africa, And blacks also sang the song Das Dam, that is Call of South Africa, and it symbolized the equality of the country. Although that day neither group knew the lyrics of anthem they once despised, they would soon know the words by heart. So neither of the group, neither the black nor the white, knew the meaning or the lyrics of that anthem, and the anthem that they disliked. But now onwards, they would very soon learn the words by heart. On the day of the inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War and before my own birth, the white-skinned peoples of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned peoples of their own land. So he's talking that on the day of inauguration, he was flowed with emotions, overwhelmed with emotions, thinking of the history, that how this racial discrimination was started in South Africa. And he says that it was at the time of 20th century somewhere when the Anglo-Boer War happened, and he was not even born at that time. At that time, the white-skinned people of South Africa patched up their differences. That is, there was differences between the white-skinned people. So they finished off their differences and settled the dispute among their own skinned people and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned people of their own land. And how they ended their own differences, but then they erected a system of racial discrimination against the black, against the dark-skinned people. And the people, though belonged to their land, that is South Africa, they were of the same land, white or black, both were of the same land. But then the differences started, the discrimination started on the basis of color. The structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhumane societies the world has ever known. So it says that from there, the discrimination started, and from that, it was the most inhuman society of the world, as it was a society where there was no equality at all, and there was an inferior treatment done, and it was the most inhuman, where they were deprived of the fundamental rights. Now, in the last decade of the 20th century and my own 8th decade as a man, so it says that he is of 80 years old. So the last decade of 20th century saw what? That system had been overturned from forever. That system had been overturned, that is, the dominance of the white had been overturned. It has come to an end and replaced by one that recognized the rights and freedoms of all peoples regardless of the color of the skin. But now, with the newly formed government, with his coming to power, it would be a treatment where human would be treated as human, where equal rights would be given to all the people, where people would be free socially, economically, politically, everything, and there would not be any discrimination on the basis of skin or on the basis of race or community. So with 10th May 1994, there is a new dawn, a new chapter in the country of South Africa. That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. So Nelson Mandela remembers that how that is the freedom from oppression of the white supremacy, had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices, and it is come with the sacrifices of thousands of people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. So the suffering, the people who had suffered, and the people who have fought for the black, the people who have fought for their liberation, their courage and suffering can never be counted or repaid. I felt that day as I have on so many days that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. So he's wondering that before me there were many, many African patriots who were tortured, who were not given liberty, who were not given basic rights, freedom, and who were it is because of the result of those sacrifices, of the results of those patriots, that um, he says that he is the sum total of those patriots and their sacrifices. That long and noble line ended and now began again with me. That long and noble line ended, that is, with me, that long and noble line ended. That means these were the people, these were the patriots who sacrificed for the struggle, who sacrificed against oppression of the white supremacy, who sacrificed for their right to live, who sacrificed their life because of the exploitation done by the white. And this noble line ended with Nelson Mandela. That is, this day, 10th May 1994, sees a celebration of the first black president of South Africa. But then he says, and now began again with me. That is, the struggle is not over. Now the responsibilities have increased, and he, as a president, and has to make sure that all the countrymen of South Africa are given equal rights and there is no discrimination done on the basis of colors or community. I was pained that I was not able to thank them and that they were not able to see what their sacrifices had wrought. Wrought means achieved. So he says that I am pained that I was not able to thank these people, these patriots personally. And I'm pained to see that they were not able to see that their sacrifice for the country, their sacrifice for the people of South Africa has brought this beautiful dawn of 10th May, where not only South Africa but the world celebrates the freedom of South Africa. The world celebrates the freedom of a human life to live without any discrimination of color or race or community they belong to. So these people, he was not able to thank them, and he pained to see that they did not live, they did not survive to see this beautiful dawn of South Africa. That is, the new chapter was to be written from 10th May 1994. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. So this policy of apartheid, that is to torture, a system of racial discrimination, was done where the blacks were treated inhumanly, and they were not given any rights, any freedom, and they were tortured badly. So it had left wound, and this wound is lasting wound. It is going to be there for the time. These tortures and hardships will be there in the hearts of the people of South Africa. All of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt. So he says that it would take time for the South African people to come out of the deep wound that they have got from their own people, the white people, and it might take some years to come out of that wound, the deep and strong wound that is there, or the intense wound that is there in their hearts. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced the Oliver Tombos, the Walter Sisulu, the Chief Lutuli, the Yusuf Dadu, the Bram Fisher, the Robert Subuki of our time, men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom, and generosity that their like may never be known again. So he says that though the people suffered, though The black people have suffered, they were jailed, they were beaten, they were brutally beaten, there were many atrocities done on them, they were not given any rights, any freedom. But then, with this sacrifice, this oppression, what had happened? It has raised such people, such extraordinary people of courage and wisdom. Because of those atrocities, people rose and they raised their voice against injustice, and such gems were produced in South Africa who sacrificed their life for the South African country or for the soil. And it is their courage, wisdom, and generosity that their like may never be known again. It is because of their courage, their bravery, their wisdom, and generosity that the South African people will never be able to repay them, and will never be able to, there cannot be any other who can stand against such atrocities. Perhaps it requires such depths of oppression to create such heights of character. So, Nelson Mandela says that it is because of the unbearable oppression, because of the atrocities, that such people were inspired the birth of men with extraordinary courage and character. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. So Mandela says that how South Africa is famous for the richness of the soil, for the richness of the minerals over there, the gems over there. But then he says the strength does not lie that there are minerals and gems in the soil of South Africa. The greatest wealth of the country of South Africa is the people. The people who have given their lives and sacrificed their life for the country, and the present people who are there, who stand together to celebrate the victory. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. So he says that how these people, these comrades, these people, fellow people, the struggle to fight against the racism, the struggle of liberation of the black people from the white supremacy. He learned from his fellow men, from the fellows, the meaning of courage, the meaning of bravery. Time and again, I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. So he says that with the example of many countries, he has seen that how men and women give their life, they sacrifice their life for the country because of an idea, the idea of freedom, or the idea of for the benefit of the general public. I have seen men stand up to attacks and tortures without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. So he says that how I have experienced that how people, they stand by, they are able to bear the attacks and tortures, and they do not break, they do not give up, and they show strength and resilience. They are able to deal with those hardships, and that is unimaginable. He says, too much of dominance always brings out the fortitude and firmness of purpose in human beings. So it is unimaginable that how these people do not break, and they stand by the cause and fight. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. So he says, with these people, that is Oliver Tambo, Yusuf Dado, Bram Fisher, with these people he has learned what, and many other people, and his experience of the history of the other countries. He says, I have learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Courage is the victory over fear. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. So he says that how the brave man, who is a brave person? A brave person is one who can conquer fear, where any sort of brutality or atrocities does not break him. He is not pained by any such dominance or any such inhuman behavior, and he sticks to his purpose and fights. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. So when a person takes birth, he is not taking birth with hatred or with jealousy or with discrimination. These things we learn in society, these things we learn from people, and that is hatred, discrimination, status, backgrounds, religion. These all we learn only in society. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. So people learn to hate. They learn this hatred from the society by discriminating in the name of religion, in the name of color, in the name of gender, in the name of status. We all learn this in society. If we can learn to hate, then obviously people can be taught love, because they can be taught love, they can be taught brotherhood, they can be taught uh, love easily, because it is the human heart desires. It is very natural for human heart to love. Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards, perhaps just for a second, but it was enough to reassure me and keep me going. He says that when he and his people and his fellow men or friends were suffering in the prison, were suffering why? Because they were black, because they were considered as outlaws, because they were fighting for their right as a human being. Even they have the right to live though they are black. So they were fighting against racial discrimination, racial segregation. So when they were fighting against this and they were present in jail, he says that how he and his comrades were pushed to our limits, that they had to bear the pain, extreme pain. And I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards, perhaps just for a second, that at that period of time I can see a slight ray of hope in the guard, when he used to show a slight ray of hope with humanity when we were tortured and atrocities were done onto us. Might be just for a second, but it was enough to reassure me, and keep me going. But that hope, that ray was enough for Nelson Mandela to know that human heart can be taught love. It is very easy to make people love each other and make them learn brotherhood and togetherness. So he says that that ray of hope in the guard helped me to keep on going and fighting for the cause. The cause was to liberate the black from the white supremacy, to give equal rights to the black people of life, of living, of human dignity. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. So everyone, every people, every man has goodness, and this goodness can be hidden for a certain period of time, but it cannot come to an end.